Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the world of Marvel Comics comes one of the most popular superhero franchises of all time, featuring everyone's favorite neighborhood web-slinger, back in a new adventure against a respected mentor-turned-villain who uses the woman he loves and his best friend in a bid to gain ultimate power. We're talking about Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 was directed by Sam Raimi on a screenplay by Alvin Sargent from a story by Miles Miller, Alfred Gall, and Michael Chabon. It was released in the United States on June 30, 2004, and is the sequel to 2002's Spider-Man. Spider-Man 2 continues the story of Daily Bugle freelance photographer Peter Parker, who is also known to the world as the costume adventurer Spider-Man. The film finds Peter now attending college, but his time is heavily divided as he tries to balance his studies with his life as the hero of New York. Mary Jane Watson, Peter's love interest from the first movie, is now pursuing a career as a stage actress, while Peter's best friend Harry Osborn has assumed leadership in Oscorp, his late father, Norman Osborn's company. Both MJ and Harry are distanced from Peter throughout the film. Peter's desire to keep MJ safe means he refuses to share his secret life as Spider-Man with her, and Harry is distrustful of Peter due to Harry's belief that Spider-Man killed his father, who is actually the Green Goblin. Dr. Otto Octavius is introduced in the film and quickly becomes a mentor to Peter, but when a cold fusion experiment goes horribly wrong, Octavius is bonded with massive robotic arms and becomes the villain known as Dr. Octopus. Peter's life as Spider-Man is nearly impossible to manage, as he not only has to deal with this new threat, he actually has to do it as his powers suddenly begin to misfire. This leads to Peter deciding to give up the hero's life, but he soon decides to join the battle once again when Doc Ock puts MJ's life in danger. Spider-Man 2 was applauded by fans and critics alike upon its release. The film grossed $789 million worldwide at the box office on a budget of just $200 million and took home an Academy Award for Best Visual Effects in 2005. Thanks to the actors, the action, and the heart of the story, Spider-Man 2 continues to be one of the most popular and entertaining comic book movies of all time. And that's the lowdown on Spider-Man 2. Before the Marvel Cinematic Universe, at least for Marvel Comics fans, there wasn't a whole lot of anything. There was some stuff before, but in terms of a coherent storyline, a coherent universe that interconnected characters and stories and films and situations and everything, there really was nothing. There would be hints dropped in one film or another, things of that nature. But for a long time, it looked like DC was going to be the first one to the table in terms of having some sort of interconnected universe. They struck gold with 1989's Batman, the original Batman with Michael Keaton. Batman 2, good sequel. Everything after that, but they rebound. Christian Bale, Batman Begins. So there's other things happening. The Christopher Reeve stuff, the original Superman, of course, classic, very underrated flick. For my money, top 5 best comic movies of all time, maybe number 1. So DC, I don't know, it just always felt like they had more of their thumb on the button in terms of how to do this, and if anybody could do it right, it would be them. And also, long before the MCU, Marvel, with a few exceptions, couldn't really do anything right. I mean, before 1998's Blade, there was a whole bunch of nothing. There was direct to video, direct to VHS. Film's not really even worth joking about at this point. That's how freaking bad they are. They swung for the fences with Punisher with Dolph Lundgren. Wow, another podcast from their time. But 1998's Blade really opened everything up. It led to 2000's X-Men. Once X-Men hits in 2000, I mean, now you're talking, okay, it's an open playing field now. Now we can go to town. We can have fun, because X-Men proved, hey, this is possible. We can make this good, entertaining, fun, all the above, and it can make money. Okay. So fast forward to 2002, we finally get Webhead himself, Spider-Man. for my money, pound for pound, quite possibly the best and greatest superhero um, maybe that's ever existed. Phil, I know you got strong takes on this, but this particular episode is not about the first film. It's about what a lot of fans to this day regard as maybe the best comic book film. To this day, a lot of people still talk about this. And of course, the best sequel, Spider-Man 2. Phil, tell me something right off the bat, man. What is it about Spider-Man the character and that really gets you? And tell everybody about the hot take. We're going to kick the show off with your hot take on this sequel. So lay it on me. Lay it on them.
I not only think that Spider-Man 2 is one of the greatest movies of all time, I think it is one of the greatest sequels of all time as well. And I think for a lot of people, the greatest sequel and greatest comic book movie is The Dark Knight. But for me, I believe that Spider-Man 2 is better. I know that's a hot take. A lot of people won't agree with that because Dark Knight is held in such a high regard. But for me, as a enormous Spider-Man fan and a big fan of the genre, I believe Spider-Man 2 is better. That's just my opinion.
I can see that and I respect it. And we were talking about this before we started recording here today. The fact that Batman and Spider Man are such different characters, and I think one of the things that makes Spidey so good and so relatable is that he's down to earth. He's an everyman. He's not a billionaire. He doesn't have he doesn't have Tony Stark's money, and depending on what version you're talking about, he doesn't have Stark's tech either. Doesn't have any tech, and he's just down his luck. And we'll get into this as this pod goes on. But Bruce Wayne's obsessed with fighting crime. He's obsessed with being Batman. If Peter had his way, he wouldn't be doing this anymore. So I think he wouldn't even have the powers, which to me, Phil, is a direct statement, a direct comment on what separates Marvel from DC. If you had to boil it down to one overall thesis statement, the statement is that it's not about being the hero and wearing this stuff. It's about I do it because no one else is going to, and because I have a responsibility to do it. That's very wordy for one statement. But in DC, it kind of feels like, well, I have to do this. I got to wear that suit. I got to put that mask on. But it's a different beast. That's got to be maybe one of the biggest differences between Batman and Spider Man. Yes.
For sure, I just feel like Spider-Man has always been an everyman character. He's always been a lot more relatable than this billionaire that inherited wealth and went all over the world to become the greatest detective and greatest martial artist and all these other things. Peter Parker didn't need to do that. Peter Parker is the story, in my opinion. Spider-Man is not the story. Peter Parker is. The way that Peter Parker grapples with responsibility and always finds a way to persevere and um, not always make the right decision, but always, stay stay ahead of it and do something heroic. I mean, you can go into a lot like how you know Batman is like the perfect embodiment of, human ingenuity. But
Hmm.
I think Spider-Man in a lot of ways is, you know, the best depiction of what someone can do once they realize I have responsibility to the world. It's more than just me.
Yeah. Very well said. And it struck a chord with me with the way you were describing that, and it kind of hit me. I think I've used this description before, but again, back to a comparison, if I can here. Uh, in DC, it's about the costume, and in Marvel, it's about the guy wearing the costume. That's kind of another big selling point for the Marvel universe. Is again, you're right. The story is Peter. It's not Spider Man. It's not the villains in the Rogues Gallery and the newspapers coming after him. It's all of that, but it's mostly about the guy at the core. Let's dive into this cast, man, before we get into the meat of the story here. Tobey Maguire was our Spider Man. Um, and for any 20 somethings right now, listen to this. Maybe Toby's not your Spider Man. Maybe Tom Holland is. And that's awesome because I love Tom Holland. He's great. But Tobey Maguire was the best fit at the time. Um, I don't. I'm going back in my head to try to think of maybe who could have done it. Who else could have done it? You and I have fantasy cast stuff many times in the past, but I don't even know if I want to bother because for my money, I thought he was great. I mean, we're not going to talk about Spider-Man 3 because oh man, wow,
um,
you know. But God, he's so good in this, man.
we were close to DiCaprio as Spider-Man at one point.
That's true. That's true. He
Uh,
could have pulled it off. I mean, let's give him credit. He probably could have pulled it off. Maybe.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, but see, I think what makes Toby so great is that he's, to me, the best depiction of Peter Parker we've gotten so far.
Hmm.
And you could go into, maybe he's not the perfect, bantering Spider-Man like some people want him to be. I see that a lot of people's gripe against him, but I think he is the perfect Peter Parker. I mean, he, I think he hits all of the right notes in the character, and I think he's one of those guys where I feel like this might be just like my fanboy um gripe with some other Spider-Mans. Like I feel like Peter Parker doesn't have to be like this strikingly handsome guy. He should be a guy that fits in in a crowd. He should be a guy that when you rip that mask off, it's like, oh, you're Spider-Man? Like you're
Right.
not who I would expect.
Right. Um, it's funny because two things hit me: the subway or the train car scene, which we'll get to when you talk about the mask off and who he really is, and also the fact that he's not the wisecracking Spidey that we all grew up reading and that are familiar with. I got to be honest with you. Maybe this is a hot take as well. As far as the actual Spider-Man himself in the suit, I think Garfield might have been the best depiction of that because the wisecracks were there. He kind of sounded like a jerk when he talked to you, like a smartass. I mean, I don't know, man. I mean, his version in the suit itself with the dialogue, I think may have been the best thing we've seen so far with him.
I think it is. I I really like Tom Holland both inside and out of the suit, but he's really not traditional Spider-Man. He's kind of like Ultimate Spider-Man. He's not like
Right.
the Spider-Man that I grew up with from like the Ditko books or like the Romita, and so that's just my personal take on it. I don't think we've had a bad Spider-Man yet, to be honest.
Oh man, I'll go with that. Batman fans can't say that, huh? About their guy. I'm just
No.
saying. But no, dude, that's God, dude, man, excellent point. Yeah, I don't think we've had a bad one yet. Yeah, I mean, dude, I'll be honest with you. I grew up. If I'm going old school, Nicholas Hammond was my Spider-Man. We're talking about the 1970s TV show. Hey, man, he was way too tall, way too big, way too old, way too much hair to be under that mask. But yeah, if anybody's out there hasn't checked out that show, you got to go give it a chance. It's awful and it's great at the same time. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I don't think that we've had a bad one. I agree with that. Uh, he just and I don't know how old he was when this was filmed. I mean, there's the jokes about oh Toby's 35 and this movie happens. Come on, look at him. I mean, could he have passed for high school? Probably not. He was in college at this point. Could he have passed for freshman year? I mean, I guess. And if I overanalyze it too much, I'll make myself crazy. But again, I just don't know who else could have been it. I love that he's not tall. And again, go back to Garfield's very tall compared to these other guys. I love that he's not tall. I love that he's unassuming. I love that he is such a nerd and he
Yes.
plays it so well. And dude, when this movie opens, it doesn't take very long. Within the first 10 minutes of this film, Peter is a loser. He's a complete. His life is so out of whack. No girl can barely keep his job, gets fired in no time. He's failing at school to the point that Professor Connors, who we never get to see, this version of Professor Connors become the lizard later. Um, but he flat out tells him, "I'm going to fail you if you don't straighten yourself up." Dude, he can't keep his life together. I mean, It's a pretty heavy way to start the film, but man, it doesn't take long, and I applaud the writing and the direction on this. You're able to go on that with him in the few minutes that you see him struggling, and you're like, oh my god, this guy's falling apart, man. Isn't that some way to start off a superhero film? It's crazy.
Yeah, and I had to, but I feel like that's what makes Spider-Man 2 so satisfying because a great big part of Spider-Man as a character is that he is, in some ways, this lovable loser. He's this guy that we root for to get it right, even
Mm.
though, he keeps stumbling. Um, and I think the beginning of the movie does such a great job of setting up all of the burdens that come with being Spider Man. I mean, yeah, he doesn't get the girl, and I mean, he basically gets the girl, but he's making a decision to not get the girl because he feels like his responsibilities as Spider-Man mean that much more. Um, I mean, he's holding on to this secret um, that he knows how Uncle Ben died. All of this stuff is set up within like the first 20 minutes of the movie. I mean, his his best friend is not getting along with him because he is taking pictures as a photographer of Spider-Man just to get by, and he can't tell him the truth either. He is burdened with all of these things, and at the same time, he's putting on the suit every night and doing what's right.
Yeah, back to the I have a responsibility thing. With great power comes great responsibility. So yeah, he feels like he doesn't have a choice. He has to juggle all these balls in the air. Let's talk about Mary Jane. Uh, for my money, the best Mary Jane that we've seen, and we've only really seen two because we never saw her in Garfield Spider Man because we got Gwen Stacy because we had to have the redhead dye her hair blonde or wear a blonde wig, whatever it was, which is really weird. Um, Still don't understand that one, but uh, I just think she's awesome. Kirsten Dunst is, and honestly, I'd forgotten how good she is in this till I rewatched it last night. Dude, talk to me about Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson.
Yeah, I always felt like Emma Stone should have been Mary Jane. I
Yeah.
felt like changing her to be Gwen was purely to separate the Amazing Spider-Man movies from the other franchise. They just didn't want to go the same route. Um, but I just feel like she makes so much more sense as Mary Jane. Um, but I mean, she wasn't a bad Gwen Stacy either.
Right.
Um, I, Kristen Dunst is so interesting to me because at sometimes I feel like it's a miscast, um, but she fits so well in the dynamic that they created for Peter and Mary Jane in this movie. Um, just having them be neighbors and having them be friends and not making her like this elusive model and all these other things like she is in a comic. It's completely different,
Yeah.
but it worked for this adaptation really well.
Honestly, I didn't really think about it in those terms, but you're right. In the book, she was so far out of his league, like incredibly out of his league, to the point where every time she showed up in a panel, you're like, "Oh my god, she's going to talk to him?" Like, what? Like, yeah, that was yeah, that's
Yeah,
true. She's more of a homebody here. She's not really a jet setting. I mean, in the sequel that we're talking about here, she's coming into her own. But in the first film, she's a popular girl, but not the popular girl. Like she's somewhere in between. Yeah, you're right. I mean, dude, do you think a lot of that is done because they're trying to give them a connection where it won't be so hard to make a connection later with these two characters? Maybe.
yeah. I think it's a mix of what Bendis did with the Ultimate comic because it was the same way in Ultimate comic where she lived next door.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, I think it's an interesting route to take her out of being like this blind date he got set up on because that's how they first meet in the comics, right?
Right. Yes.
um, and take her out of that and make her this girl next door character. And I think the way they did it in this movie works a lot better than in the first movie.
Yeah, and she's we'll get into what's going on with these two here when we get into the actual film, but A lot of hangups, a lot of issues from the first film are definitely going to come into play in this movie. You talked about uh, Peter's best friend, Harry Osborn. James Franco is back. And the time this is recorded is 2021, and we kind of know some stuff now about Franco. It's not good, and I am compelled to tell everyone that just because we're reviewing this movie, if we praise this guy or don't praise this guy, I'm going to try not to connect it back to anything that may or may not be true of him now, because I don't really think that's fair to the film. What the guy, his performance in the film. That's just me. That's just my take. Having said that, I don't know that I felt she was miscast, but there's moments in this film where I felt like his direction wasn't good, or his grasp of the character wasn't good. And that's not to crap on him. But those times when he's talking to Doc Ock and he's like, "Oh, we're gonna get rich" and all this stuff, and it,
Nobel Prize.
yeah, dude, is it just me, or is he hamming it up almost
He's
like
he's
it's a caricature
extremely
of the character? Yeah, you know.
he's extremely hammy, and that's one of those things that I've grown to appreciate about the Raimi movies is
Hmm.
how hammy he is in these movies. And I will say this about James Franco: um, if you're looking at him, his profile, just how tall he is, his bone structure, just how defined his cheekbones are in this movie, he looks like a Ditko drawing. Like he looks like
Mm.
straight off of a comic book page.
Wow, he really does. Yeah, he's got everything but the crew cut
Yes,
that the Osbournes had.
he looks very close to what I would expect a human version of like a Ditko drawing uh of Norman Osborn's son to look like. He definitely looks the part. Now, some of the things he says in this movie, like one of my favorite lines, every time he says it, I bust up laughing, is when he comes out and he's I'm ruined.
Oh my God, it's so
and
bad.
his driver goes, he saved your life, sir. He embarrassed me by touching
Yeah.
me. It's so bad, but at the same time, I love that he is just so committed to being hammy in this movie. Because one of the great quirks about the Raimi movies is just how campy they are, and he jumps in foot first, like there's no going back.
Yeah, he uh when he gets patted on the shoulder about during the experiment, he says, this is an accomplishment the likes of which your father could only imagine. And he says, "Thank you." And I'm like, "What?
the
What
way he
was
does,
that?"
the way he does it, he puts his hand on him, and he turns to him. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's just so hammy. It's hilarious. Um, but yeah, he I the other thing I will give him credit for is I think from the first movie on, they did a great depiction of um their friendship and just how difficult it would be to be friends with Peter Parker, because he's so flaky and all these other things. And then you add on to that Norman always saw in Peter what he wanted in a son.
Hmm.
And I think all of that stuff is depicted really, really well. And I think they got a lot of how conflicted Harry was in this movie. I think they got that stuff right. Now, does does Franco always play it well? Not really.
Right. Yeah, you're right. And I kind of forgot about that, honestly. The From the first part of the series here, the fact that Peter's a smart guy, and you could tell that he and Norman have a lot of that in common because they're both really smart guys. Harry's a smart guy too, but it seems like Harry's smarts come from more of an academic front than like sort of using your mind in terms of electronics and that kind of thing. He's more of a I don't know. I'm thinking like majored in English, minored in history kind of guy instead of science and technology. That doesn't seem to be what he is. But then he's forced sort of to, again, responsibility here, kids. He takes up the mantle of being in charge of his father's company after his father died in the first movie. So maybe it was something that ordinarily he would not have even have taken had the circumstances been different, you know?
Yeah. I will say also, again, James Franco is not perfect in this movie, but I feel like the scene that his acting was on point was the scene at the gala at the planetarium when he is drunk and he gets into a fight with Peter. All of that is done really well. I mean,
Oh yeah.
the way he delivers the lines, you've taken everything from me. You took my dad. You stole MJ from me, and you won't even tell me the truth about Spider-Man. And I mean, just slaps him super hard. And I mean, again, perfect depiction of Peter Parker because in that moment, Peter could have taken his head off. We all know it,
Yeah.
and he wouldn't because he knows better than that. And to humble himself in that moment is a part of what makes Peter Parker so great as a character.
And he slapped him twice.
Twice, and he never flinched on it. And he had every right to be frustrated. I mean, you watching a girl that you love get engaged to someone else, and like all of these things are happening. Everything is crashing down on him in this moment, and he doesn't react out of anger. He doesn't, you know, he doesn't have a pity party in that moment. He's just like, I still have to do what's right. And he's drunk in this moment. I can't take advantage of him. I can't, use my superior strength on this guy because at the end of the day, he doesn't understand. He's my friend, and I have to protect him as his friend.
Yeah, and we don't really see him doing anything for himself until later when the powers start to fade. And then he makes the conscious decision, screw it, I'm going to do something for myself now. I'm going to leave this behind. Um, yeah, it's almost like he doesn't have a learning curve as Peter, whereas you would expect a younger guy to make mistakes. Not that he's perfect, he's not, but we don't ever really see a moment where it's like, oh, he shouldn't have done that. Oh, that's a bad move. We do see it and with other younger characters and other depictions of the character. Like Miles Morales makes mistakes in Into the Spider Verse because he's young and he doesn't know what he's doing yet. But I don't know that we really see that with Toby's Peter, unless I'm just not remembering something.
Yeah, I mean, he makes mistakes in this movie, but I think he's so selfless
Yeah,
in a lot of the things he does at the beginning of the movie because he's carrying so many burdens. I mean, he I mean everything that in when he comes to his birthday party at the beginning and they're trying to have this party for him and he already is looking over all these things and again it's such a great scene when he comes in and he's talking to Aunt May about the mortgage and she tries to give him the $20 and he's just like I can't take that.
oh
and
man.
and I mean I'm sure we'll get into how great Aunt May is in this movie, but like her whole rant to him of no, you take this money, don't leave it here. Like every
Yeah.
time she delivers that line, like I feel like a tear wells up because
Oh
she
yeah.
just delivers it so well.
Oh, full disclosure, I teared up many times in this film. Many, because I'm connected to this stuff, man. I can't help it. Like, it's not just any old character, any old franchise, man. I mean, you put on, First Avenger and he dives on that grenade. I got tears in my eyes because I'm like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And I do that a lot with these movies. I can't help myself, man. But you're right. The way she delivers that line and when she gets weepy during that, and Toby looks like he's going to cry from the second this movie starts to the second it ends. And by the time it ends, you're like, yeah, I can see why this guy wants to cry all the time. This sucks. Like his whole
Yeah,
life falls apart. He's doing all he can to keep it together.
yeah, and I mean even if you're looking at it from the unspoken word, there is he's sitting and watching his aunt be alone and struggle to pay a mortgage, and he's thinking about it like she wouldn't be in this predicament if it wasn't for me.
Yep.
If Ben was here, he would know what to do.
Yep. And speaking of Aunt May, Rosemary Harris, who I believe was British, I believe. Um, I mean, best Aunt May I've ever seen. And
Yes.
I thought Lily Tomlin in Into the Spider Verse was great, but Um, this was pretty freaking awesome. She's so good, and she's everything you want Aunt May to be, and then some. And like you said, that line when she gives it to him, she said, it's not that much money for God's sake. Like she's really serious. Like, let me do that. Don't treat me like that. Let me do something, you know. Oh my God. But you're right, man. Just the knowledge he has. And I don't know if that had left me in the meantime, like not the origin story, of course, what happened, but the gravity of it all is the fact that, yeah, he could tell her what he did and leave out the Spider-Man stuff, which I kind of always thought, well, he could never tell her because the end of it led to him being Spider-Man. Well, that's not, he could leave that out and he could tell her the rest, which he does. And I don't know that that ever hit point A to point B for me in my head. But you're right, man. He'd been living with that since the first movie and finally broke down and told her in this one. I mean,
Yeah.
crazy.
I mean, I think a lot of people, when they, to go back to the Dark Knight take, a lot of people talk about how great the acting is in that movie and just how, you know, there's so much gravitas in that movie. And I would come back and say the same reason why I say Spider-Man 2 is so good, because there's such great acting in this movie. And I think Aunt May is prime example. Like there's several scenes in this movie where she does some phenomenal acting. There's that brief scene where she tells him to take the money. There's of course the hero speech, which is delivered incredibly well. Um, there's of course the entirety of the bank scene. Um, I mean, she goes from serious to in peril to, comedic, all in this one scene, and she does it very very well.
Yeah, she's fantastic. I mean, and there's so much to be said for this cast. You can't talk about this cast, dude, without talking about the man, J.K. Simmons as freaking J. Jonah Jameson, who, if there was ever a guy born to play a role, he was absolutely born to play Jonah. He is so good. He is fantastic. He's I just can't get over. And he's over the top too, but never in a way that makes you go, "Oh God, did you hear how he said that?" He's over the top because he has to be over the top. He is. I can make this whole show about him. He's awesome, man. J. Jonah Jameson, dude. What a great thing in this film.
I mean, in my mind, nobody else should play this character. No one. He is just the perfect Jonah. I mean, he gets all of the curmudgeon, the humor, all of it perfectly well. The the fact that he's doing a job and he knows that he's full of it, but he does it anyway. It's like he knows on some levels that he's giving Spider-Man too much of a hard time, but it's the job. He's already committed to it, being editor in chief and being a sensationalist because it sells papers. Um, and he just does it all so well. And I mean, not to skip ahead of you, but every time I see this movie, of course, rest in peace to Billy Nunn. Radio Raheem, one of the other highlights in this movie as Robbie. I mean,
Yes.
I, I still can't believe that he's gone. Because I just think of him so highly in this movie and other movies, and this is just one of those things where I just don't feel like he gets his flowers enough.
I feel like there's another reality here where he gets a bigger role. And I told you I wasn't going to talk about part three, and I don't want to because, oh God. Um, but refresh my memory. Did he have a bigger role in part three, or am I not remembering that?
Not really. I mean, he's essentially still like supporting cast.
Man.
In another world, we get like a Prowler storyline, and we get to introduce his son and all that other stuff. But
Oh,
that
yeah.
just never happened.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's a missed opportunity. Um, I would have liked to have seen him be able to stand up a little bit next to Simmons. And it's real easy, kids, for Simmons to completely devour everything within a 5 mile radius of him when he's on camera as Jameson. I don't know of a scene that he doesn't chew everything all to pieces. So anyone trying to stand up with him and share the scene is going to have a tough go of it. But I really do think that there's a missed opportunity there with Robbie Robertson for sure. No
Yeah, I
doubt.
Again, I think Bill Nunn is another one of those guys where he did some great acting in this movie. He does a lot of nonverbal stuff here that I just don't think he gets his credit for. When a garbage man comes in with the suit and he's standing there looking down at the mask, just done so well.
Yeah, because you get the feeling that he already knew. Because and I got that a couple of times, and I'll get there eventually here in the notes, but a few different times in this film where I'm like, wait a minute, does she know? Wait, does he know? It's almost like people are figuring this out, which isn't hard, kids. Listen, if you are a nerd like Phil or myself, and I think we'll take that name and run with it. I don't take offense to it, never really have. Uh, I know what I am. I don't care. But guys like me and Phil and girls have always had the discussion from the Kick Ass book where friends are at a table and there's like, well, what would it really be like to be a hero? Well, you'd have to do this. And what about, well, he couldn't have been that guy because they would have known, and your girl can't be in it because of this, and your friends would get in danger. We've always had these conversations. I know I have over the years. And this idea of, is this possible? Was 2021, we're recording this. The heck with the movies. Let's make it happen. Is it possible? Well, right off the bat, if you love anybody, you have to say goodbye to them because it's too hard. I mean, even if you didn't have powers, if you were just some vigilante who happened to get away with it and never left prints behind, and you became like a, I don't know, like a folk legend, and people loved you and you never exactly broke the law only to help people, they're going to find you because of, and the bad guys will probably find you too, because if you've got any connections to the outside world, that's going to get exploited. So this film, I think, Phil, does a great job of answering the question, is it possible? The answer is yeah, but man, is it dangerous, because, and Peter knows that. To be as young as he is, he knows from the one of the first discussions he has about it is like, Spider-Man has enemies. He says it twice, I think. Spider-Man has enemies, and I can't have connections because if I do, they're going to be in jeopardy. I think that answers a big fanboy discussion that we've all had for years. Is, what if this were true? The answer is easy. It, it it's almost impossible, right? Because, you know, this guy had amazing powers and abilities. I know it's fictional, I get it, but still. Um, and every time he turned around, well, let's grab Aunt May. Well, let's grab MJ. Well, let's grab Harry. Like, the three people he cared about the most in the world are the three people that get targeted, which tells you something.
Yeah. But I mean, I think the other part that makes this movie so brilliant is that we watched him make a lot of his grave mistakes in the first movie.
Mm.
We watch him make, the biggest mistake that he feels of his life, and letting the guy go in this brief moment where he was selfish and tried to be petty, and it cost him. It cost him his uncle. And there's a great line that I always forget about until I rewatch the movie. Towards the beginning, again in that birthday scene where he's in there, and Harry says, you know, if this was the guy that killed your Uncle Ben, you want to see him dead too. And he just stared off into space. He couldn't even respond because
Mm.
he already knows everything that it cost him, and he already knows the mistake that came from that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's great. And when you read the comic, if, by the way, kids, if you never read Amazing Fantasy number 15, you're missing out. The first appearance of Spider-Man is epic. They've been retelling that story with this character and with other characters for years. It's a great origin story. Um, Kid had to grow up, and basically overnight had to grow up and be a man, and it's not easy. But yeah, you're right. The burden that he carries is tremendous. Uh, we don't hear Peter's parents mentioned again, really, ever. I don't think ever in this entire trilogy. We don't pursue that till later, to the Garfield version of Spider-Man. Again, like you said, they want to set themselves apart. So no father here to deal with, although the idea of a father figure continues to follow this character. We saw it in the first movie with Norman Osborn, who eventually becomes the Goblin. And this movie, for whatever reason, Phil, in a heartbeat, Dr. Octavius becomes a father figure. and it happens so fast. Looking back on it, do you think maybe that should have been fleshed out? Like, let it be known through the film that this was a month or two working side by side, working as an understudy. That way it means more to him later when everything happens, maybe?
We'll see. I don't know if I ever felt like Ak acts as a father figure here. I think that he sees in Ak a guy that did everything that he might have done if he didn't become Spider-Man.
Mm.
If he didn't become Spider-Man, he might have been driven, and he might have become like a respected scientist, and maybe he would have been able to pursue Mary Jane and marry his high school sweetheart. And I think all of that stuff is so specifically set up that way because, in those scenes where he's sitting and having dinner with him, it looks like he has everything that Peter thinks he wants. And so I didn't see it as a father figure thing because I feel like we had gone full circle with the father figure stuff with
Ah.
Norman. And I felt like letting him deliver that amazing line from Spider-Man 1 and say, I had a father. His name was Ben Parker. Um, I feel like that was such a perfect cap to that. Like you didn't need to go back to it.
Hmm. Very true. I guess for me in my head, I'm just looking at an older character who's at his point in his life, maybe like you said, where Peter wants to be, and it sort of gives him an inspiration to aspire to. Um, but no, I get that take. It makes sense. One of the things you get about Doc Ock very early on, before he ever becomes Doc Ock, is that he and his wife are crazy in love,
Yes.
and it's obvious. And I mean, there's a really good reason for that, because something really bad happens to her later. Um, but yeah, he's talk about Alfred Molina as Doctor Octavius, man. I mean, if you look at him from a distance, you wouldn't think automatically think comic book villain, but he was the heavy and Dark Man, and that's another Sam Raimi joint. And if anybody's never seen Dark Man, it's so worth your time. Liam Neeson, back before things got weird with Liam Neeson, um, it's as camp can be, but I love that film so much. I just can't help myself. It's like B movie cult classic kind of thing. And we see a lot of Darkman in this film. I got to be honest with you.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but
Uh,
Alfred Molina is good casting. Yes, you think?
I think that he does a fantastic job here. He's another one where I feel like he doesn't get enough credit for how well he acted in a lot of these scenes. I mean, he
Mm.
did some phenomenal acting here. And I would go far on to say that Doc Ock is the best live action Spider Man villain. I think that he
Ooh.
is.
So no, Jamie Foxx is Electro. Is that what I'm hearing? Really?
No, I'm Electro, bro. Um, I think he's the best. I really enjoy Keaton as Vulture.
Oh,
He's so good. I really enjoy Gyllenhaal as Mysterio as well, but I still think that Doc Ock is the standard.
yeah. That's wow. That's good stuff. And I flash back to Keaton's Vulture when he turned around. He tells Peter. He
Oh
says,
man.
remember, he says, I'll kill you and everybody you care about. And the way he does it, I'm like, that's it. I'm never going to do it again. You don't have to worry about me, sir. I'm out. Because, like, I believe him.
Oh my
You know what I
god.
mean?
We can go into an entire tangent on how perfect that scene is. I mean, to the point of him going in the glove compartment and taking out the gun and turning around and saying, "Listen," like very softly and very intimidating and scarily, looking at a teenager and telling him, "Like, listen, I don't care what you think you're gonna do, but don't get in my way.
Right.
I will kill you and everybody you love."
It's
And
great.
it's so believable. it like, and then right after that, Peter doesn't hesitate. He immediately goes for his suit. He doesn't show any fear in that moment because he knows I have to do the right thing. It doesn't matter that I got the girl. It doesn't matter that I got everything I wanted, and I'm going to the dance with the person I wanted. I have to do this.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, without going too much into Tom Holland's version, uh, that's one thing I can say about this specific character. I don't know if I've ever seen a Spider-Man film where I'm like, well, that's not Peter. Nope, not him. I could say things about the actor's physical appearance or motivations and all that stuff, but in terms of his heart, I feel like pretty much, with maybe an exception here or there, they usually get his character right because way back when in other podcasts we mentioned how it shouldn't be this hard to get Superman right. Like it shouldn't be hard to get Spider-Man right. And guess what? It's really not. If you just understand the character, kids, and the people who have handled him over the years have. So there's some commentary for you.
Um, I would say the worst Peter Parker, in my opinion, is Andrew. And it's not his fault that he's a bad Peter Parker because he gets a lot of things right. He gets the accent right. He has that like tall and wiry look that I would expect Peter to look like. I feel like he has the right build and physique for Peter and Spider-Man. But the things that I didn't like is that there's so many scenes in those amazing movies where he is trying to be too cool for school for me, like the showing up to your graduation in a t-shirt and shorts, and it's basically like, oh, I'm too cool, and like, and hey, Aunt May, by the way, this is my girlfriend who I have to dip and make out with in front of you. It's just like
Right.
this doesn't feel right.
Well, I try to give the kid some credit here, but
But other than that, Garfield is great. Like I don't want to give him too much slack because he you can tell he loved playing the character. It just he didn't have the right material some of the time.
oh, I agree with that. That essentially rounds out the cast here, kids. Daniel Gillis, I think is how you pronounce his name, is John Jameson, who ends up getting engaged to MJ. The previously aforementioned Kirk Connors is portrayed by Dylan Baker. Great character actor. Been around Hollywood for a long time. Very good at what he does. Again, we never get to see him fleshed out, unfortunately, as the Lizard. Willem Dafoe does reprise his role as Norman in a flashback or in a weird scene at the end, which he really wanted to do. Another reason to love. I'm gonna write a book one day, Phil, called 100 Reasons to Love Willem Dafoe. This is one. This is one of them. He wanted to do this. He couldn't wait to do it. Like he couldn't wait to portray the Green Goblin in the first film. They offered it to John Malkovich. Malkovich said, "I don't do comic book movies." Willem Dafoe
Wow.
said, "Yes." Willem Dafoe said, "I can't wait to do it. Please let me do it now." He loved it. It's another reason to
Uh,
love this guy.
they also have to talk about Bruce Campbell being Bruce Campbell in this movie.
Absolutely.
He's phenomenal. He's hilarious in this movie. Every cameo he makes in the Spider-Man movies are just hilarious. He's great.
Yes. Sam Raimi, the director, his brother Ted, is also Ted in this movie. Ted Hoffman.
Yes, yes.
He's always great.
Also always great. Yes. Um. Yeah. I can't say enough good things about the cast for this movie. I mean, I know some people aren't the biggest fan of the two leads, but I think Toby, he manages to do what I would expect Peter Parker to do. It's like you look at him, and as a movie star, you're like, this is our guy, this is our leading actor. But that's exactly what you would think of Peter Parker. Like he
Yes.
is not supposed to be the leading guy. That's the part that makes him Peter Parker. When you look at him, he could be anybody under that mask.
Right.
And he's a superhero, and you would think you're gonna whip this mask off. He's gonna be this, you know, amazingly stunning, great looking guy, and it's just Toby. And I mean, that's not to say that Toby is a slouch or anything, or that he's not handsome to some people, but he's not a conventional movie star.
No. But you're right. He doesn't have to be. He doesn't need to be. He's perfect.
But that fits the character in my opinion because Peter Parker is not a conventional superhero.
And I had forgotten that Betty Brant was Elizabeth Banks. I had totally
Yes,
forgotten.
yes.
She's awesome.
I
She's
yes,
awesome.
I really like Betty in these movies. I wish that she got to do more. But she's another one of those background characters where I think they could have done so much more if they did a fourth movie. Um, yeah, there's so many background characters in this movie that make this a great. I mean, Peter's landlord. Just he's, there's so many background characters. I mean, the guy that he works for at the pizza joint. The scene where he comes out and he's trying to deliver the pizzas, and he runs into the alley and he comes out with the pieces of the Spider-Man, and the guy from
Yeah.
the Chappelle show is like, he stole a guy pizza.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned the landlord because I got one word for you. Rent?
Rent.
Rent? Oh my God, it's so good.
He comes in with the $20 that Aunt May gave him, and he snatches it immediately.
Yeah, he's like, this is all I got for the week. Bam. How about he goes to the bath? It's like evidently the floor shares the bathroom, and he goes in the bathroom and realizes Peter's still there, opens the door back up and says, "Rent?" And he just looks at him and then shuts the door on him. Oh, so good. Majina Tova, I think I'm pronouncing that right, actually plays Mr. Dickovich's daughter, who at the time, Phil, was speculation. Is this Gwen Stacy? Because she's blonde. She didn't speak Russian. And it's like, I don't think they ever really mentioned her name. But her name was Ursula. But at the time, dude, even then in 2004, we were trying to find, hey, I want this to keep going. I want this to part 4, 5, and I want there to be a universe. Like even then, man, we were still thinking, oh, well, I want this thing to expand.
Oh my God. Spider-Man 3, him sitting on the phone listening to the explanation of what a symbiote is, and Ursula is feeding him the cookies.
Oh my
Hilarious.
God.
Love it. Love that scene.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're bringing up Spider-Man 3. I didn't do it this time. You did it.
I will go out on a limb and say there are things
Don't
to
do
like
it.
about
Don't do
Spider-Man
it.
3.
Don't do it. Don't
It's
die
not
on this hill, Phil.
it's not a great movie, but there are things to like about it.
Oh God, I'm not dying on this hill, brother. I'm not doing it. Yikes.
I'm just it's the of course the worst of the three. It's not a great movie, but there are
Right.
things to like about it, I think.
We can't forget Cliff Robertson, who was in Hollywood for 100 years, it seemed, and had done everything and been in so much different kinds of stuff. A great Uncle Ben. Like everybody's Uncle Ben. I don't care what color you are or anything. Nationality doesn't matter. You're like, oh my God, I want that dude to be my uncle. He's great. And like when he got killed in the first movie, dude, shut up. That was a weepy moment too, man. Like, oh my God. Like, he's going to meet his end, but like, no, I love this guy too much.
Yeah, and his brief appearance in this movie in the scene where he's deciding not to be Spider-Man anymore.
Yeah.
I think it's handled so well. The dialogue in it is so well. And of course they use the panel from Amazing Spider-Man number 50,
Yep.
which is perfectly shot. It's just, come on, man.
So good. That is what Kevin Smith would call fan service, because that's what that is. That is such fan service. That is for the comic book fans who, without us, that movie wouldn't make any money, because your normal everyday people will go see it, but not go see it 4 times like we will. That's different. It's a different level of commitment.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah, and I mean, he even says Spider-Man no more, like it says on the cover of Spider-Man number 50.
Good stuff.
I mean, there's so many other things about this movie that I, as a fan, just like geek out for. And I mean, as we speak, today's July 1st. The movie comes out on my birthday, by the way, June 30th.
There you go.
And so when it came out, I remember this was 2004.
Yes.
And I'm pretty certain I went to see it on my birthday, and I'm pretty certain I also went back to see it again. It's one of those movies that it just means so much to me as a fan. Like, I just cannot put enough value on how much it means.
It's so good. I mean, that's the bottom line here. We haven't even gotten into the freaking movie yet, Phil, but it's so good. Oh my God, it's so good. Let me kick it off here with this. I think, maybe you'll disagree, with the exception of the end, there are some moments with Doc Ock's CG which are not bad, but it's obviously not him.
Yes.
And that's fine. I'm looking at it with 2021 eyes now, right? But in the opening scenes, the sequences of Spidey flying around, webbing around, for my money, was better than the first movie 2 years earlier.
Oh yeah, I think the web slinging aged incredibly well. I think it looks great. I think there are a lot of the action scenes in this movie that have aged very well.
Yeah, I agree with that. The train, which we'll get to, is is freaking amazing. Um, we talked about Peter being extremely burdened, all this guilt, a lot more than Tom Holland's Peter Parker, if we can make that comparison. He doesn't really have that level of guilt. We don't really ever hear about Peter's Uncle Ben. They just didn't go down that road, and that's fine. Um, but it's like, and Aunt May is kind of hot, and that's okay too. But it's different, Um, but this version of Peter is a loser. Can't get his job done. Can't pay his rent. Again, gets fired. It's exactly what Stan Lee and Steve Ditko created. He's the perfect Peter Parker. But Phil, something we see very early on, I think it was the web spinners that, well, not web spinners, but his own organic, because he's got organic fluid in this one. He's all organic. It starts crapping out on him. And over the course of the movie, we keep seeing that become a theme. He's losing his powers, which I don't know if I saw that coming, but man, that adds a whole other dimension to this character in this film.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things about it. That was a great way to go back to the trope of him in the comic books running out of web fluid and do it in such an interesting way without having like the actual web shooters. I'm a big fan of the mechanical web shooters. I'm not an organic web shooter guy.
Yeah, me neither.
But this was a great way to do that without having the mechanic web shooters. And then also, it's such a great way of going back to Spider-Man is not the perfect superhero. He's the type of superhero that he has to go and put his laundry in a machine. Like
Yes.
he's washing his suit at a laundromat. He doesn't have a butler. He doesn't have a perfect life. He's the type of guy that his powers would stop working at him for him at the worst times. Um, and I mean, there's just so many great visuals when he does lose his powers. Like the first time he does it, and he tried to whip, and it makes that noise, and then he like lands on that building. It looks great. Um,
Yeah.
it's just I think the way that they wove it into the story just works perfectly. I mean, he is going through so much in his life, and he's trying to be so selfless, and he's trying to keep all of this stuff inside. I mean, he's keeping his feelings a secret from Mary Jane. He's keeping a secret from the entire world that he's Spider-Man. He's keeping a secret from Aunt May. He's keeping secret from Harry. He's just keeping a lot bottled up, and so you know, you know, there. This is a way to handle mental health before it was cool to do it.
Right.
um, and he is dealing with all of this almost PTSD, and it affects his powers.
Yeah, because if he can't get in the right state of mind, and plus he's convincing himself, well, it must be gone. There's something, and I've not read every single comic book ever written. That's a lot of reading. But I don't know if I know of a character who became, he's blank whatever man, and he can do this, this, and that, and then suddenly it just doesn't work anymore. Like you would only have the powers for a small time, and they're gone, and they just never come back. Like it, it's funny. Like there was never a moment in this movie where he kind of said, "Well, was I just not supposed to do this? Like, did they wear off? What's going on?" Like, I guess I was thinking that in my head. Like, if I'm him, I'm thinking, well, maybe it wasn't permanent. What happened? Maybe it
Yeah,
wore off. Maybe it's out of my bloodstream now. Maybe it's, I don't know. Like, because you really don't know what's going on. It's not till he visits a doctor as Peter, which is kind of odd, that you would think maybe he would show up as Spider Man and just maybe pull his mask up to get his temperature taken or something. And it's like, well, no, even then he couldn't risk it because of DNA. See, I'm still thinking like a nerdy fanboy at a table
yeah,
talking about it.
um, yeah. But I mean, there's just so much like that's a Spider-Man trope as well. He's lost his powers several times,
Very true.
in the comic and in the television show. Um, so I thought this was an interesting way to do it, and I'm sure there were some people like, this doesn't make sense. Why would he just lose his powers? Another Spider-Man trope is that his strength is proportionate to how much he believes in himself. I mean, we saw that in the first movie. Um, we saw that in the Tom Holland films when he's trying to lift the big weight over his head, which is again another Spider-Man trope of him having the willpower to push himself beyond what his regular limits are. And I feel like that's the meaning behind this. It isn't just like a meaningless, oh, he's sad, so his powers don't work. I just think he's losing the will to be Spider-Man anymore because he's taken on so much and he's given up so much to do it.
Exactly. Because again, this is not about Spider Man. This is about Peter Parker. This whole movie is about him, the man, the person, the kid, not about the costume. Again, not DC, right? The huge, huge difference. I mean, the worst thing that ever happened to Peter Parker was getting bitten by that spider. What do you think? Yes?
I mean, for him, yeah, I think the worst thing to happen to him because I mean, I think if he had the chance to do it all over, if he could not get bitten by that spider and still have his uncle and still have so many loved ones that he lost because of it,
Mm-hmm.
I think he'd make the decision to not be Spider-Man. But
Yeah.
then at the same time, he has so much responsibility that comes with it that I think he has to accept it. And I mean, that's of course, the message of this movie.
And I'm not saying that if Bruce Wayne had to do it ever again, he'd say, nah, I'd rather they be dead. I'm good. I'm not saying that. That's a bit extreme. But I do think he enjoys being Batman. I think he is so dedicated and so committed, and he's so obsessed that I don't think he can let it go. I don't think he is able to walk away from the cape and cowl, whereas Peter was more than willing to throw his suit in the trash can in the alley and said, I'm Spider-Man no more.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, Bruce is driven in a way that Peter is just
Yes.
not. The mission means everything to him.
What do you think about? And look, it's a weird thing because in any movie like this, it's going to be a weird thing because they're going to explain stuff by just using the word science and pushing buttons. Okay, but this fusion reactor, which I'm sure, Phil, that if you're a really smart guy, much smarter than me, with some book learning under your belt, that you can watch this and go, nah, that's crap. That's not even possible. I mean, did they do enough to kind of get to the point, or are you going, wait a minute, what's going on here?
It's the most hokey comic booky science that you could come up with.
Yes.
But again, that's what makes this movie magic in my opinion because it doesn't try to be anything than what it is. It doesn't try to be grounded in reality. It doesn't try to put real science in it. It knows what it is. It's a comic book movie and it leans into all of the hokiness of the genre.
Yeah, no doubt. Tritium. Got to have that tritium, kids.
Tritium. The power of a sun in the palm of my hand.
Yeah, which he says twice in the film.
Which again, it's such a comic booky line. It just
Yeah. I mean, have you ever thought, man, if I could only have the power of the sun in the palm of my hands? Like,
um
what?
oh man, but that's why I say I've always seen he and Doc Ock's relationship in this movie to be like respected colleagues.
Hmm.
Because the way that Peter looks at it, he's like, well, that's just too much for one man, and it's like this could cause an accident. This could do this, and Ock doesn't look at it because he's so driven. Like I have a responsibility. Like he said earlier in the movie, he says, intelligence isn't a privilege; it's a gift, and it's your duty to do what's right for mankind. And so he's looking at it like, no, only I can do this. And it's like, so I've taken this on to build this machine to make sustainable energy. I can't go back. Like I've already committed myself to this.
Yeah, and he's convinced that he's got it under control, which, spoiler alert, he doesn't, and things go south quick. But on the way there, we do get to see the Bruce Campbell appearance as the usher because he's a Sam Raimi guy. He's an Evil Dead guy. I'm a Bruce Campbell guy. I love that dude.
Yes. I mean, and all of that stuff in that scene just it still looks great. I mean,
Yeah.
when we first see the arms, and when we first see them graft himself onto his back, and the needles go into his back, it still looks
Oh,
cringy every time. It still looks great. Um, the way the arms move still look great. And I mean, as hokey as this science is, like the visual of him creating this, you know, pseudo sun, it still looks great. And him like trying to push the flares in with the arms. It still looks cool.
Yeah, and it's and you mentioned how it's not trying to be anything other than what it is. That struck me in this is that during this film, I'm thinking the whole time, this is not the MCU. There's not another film that's gonna reference this. This is standalone. This is this character in his own universe in his own city of New York with not sharing it with anybody else. Although we do get some name dropping later, but we won't.
There's a few references in this thing
there's some
if you
stuff.
pay attention to it.
Yes, because they're trying to name Doc Ock, and Ted is coming up with names, and he says, "Doctor Strange." He goes, "I like it. It's already taken." So it's pretty good. That's what he says. So that's pretty good. Hard to impress Jonah Jameson for sure.
That just always, every time I think of him as Jonah, I just think crap.
Yeah, you're fired. It's crap. Where are you, Peter? You're fired. And it's like, wait a minute. And he tells him, he's like, "Oh, wait, Peter, you're rehired. Go take these pictures."
Oh my God. He has so many times where he interjects in with humor at the perfect time. When he's standing there and he's just devastated that Mary Jane is engaged, he's like, Parker, take the picture.
Yeah.
Or at the end when they're standing there and they realize Mary Jane's not coming, and he's like, call the caterer.
Yeah.
Not to open the caviar.
That's great. They're all like sort of sitting there waiting, and his head comes into the camera shot to look. Oh my God, so good. Tom Clark 6M Podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M Podcast sent you. Yeah, there's so much to get to here, man. It's crazy. So Doc Ock, calls the arms actuators. They're smart arms. And one of the reporters, they've amassed a little assemblage of reporters here, kids, says, well, this is AI. What's going to stop them from, making you crazy? Oh, I've already thought of this. I've got an inhibitor chip, controls my higher brain functions. So I control the arms. They don't control me. And that chip, Phil, is no bigger than a penny. Or maybe your pinky nail, this tiny little thing that's going to prevent these 200-pound arms or whatever they are from taking over his mind and making him do stuff.
This tiny Christmas light is
the
only thing that's stopping this artificial intelligence from taking over his mind. Again, it's just such a hokey comic book trope, but it's hilarious and I love it.
Oh my God, it's so good. So of course the thing goes south. We knew it would. He can't control it. Spider-Man is there. Harry's there. Nobel Prize, that kind of guy. Everything's fine until it's not fine. Spidey tries to unplug it. Doc stops him. And man, when Doc's wife gets killed, that is a gruesome death. There's no blood, but man, when the back of her head hit, like, holy God, man, like she's totally dead at that point. Like there's no coming back from that.
Oh man. So this goes into what I believe Sam Raimi brings to this movie that a lot of other Spider-Man movies and a lot of other comic book movies, for those that matter, just doesn't have. And I think Sam brings his style to this thing. This movie's very stylistic. Mm-hmm. And when she dies and she can see her reflection in the glass shattered glass that's coming at her, and just the way it's filmed, just the way that it zooms in and out, like all of those things are what makes this movie stand out. Like, and that's not to say that other Spider-Man movies don't have things that make them stand out. But at the same time, like when you look at the MCU Spider-Man movies, they look very much like MCU movies. Like you don't get a grasp of what the director's name's Tom Watts, right? Mm-hmm. you don't get a grasp of what Tom Watts' style is, because it feels like this is the House Feige style. Which, by the way, Feige is an executive producer on this movie. Never noticed that.
That's true. I caught that as well. Yeah. Yeah, dude. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that you're right. Stylistically, it is completely Sam Raimi because he can't. He's got to put his stamp on it.
Yes.
John Watts directed Homecoming.
John Watts.
There you go.
But yeah, there's a lot of the horror tropes that we know from Sam Raimi's other movies. There's a lot of the visual cues that we know from his other movies that are here. And I just feel like it's part of, again, what just makes this movie so special.
What about when they're trying to remove the arms and that scene is so
Oh
Sam
man,
Raimi, dude. Pulling the
it's
chick back and she's scratching the floor. Oh my god.
it's so campy and it's so over the top, but it's such a fantastic scene. The hospital scene is just so great. Um, the arms are just like killing all of these doctors in the room, and then of course he like makes his way out to the street. It just all looks so good. All the visual cues, the way it zooms in on his face while he's coming out of the hospital, an arm turns around and has that reveal to the camera, and then he runs off. It's all great.
Oh yeah. And if you didn't know that Raimi directed this, you would probably be able to figure out, wait a minute, this looks like a Sam Raimi flick, man, because
Yeah, it just I'm
so
telling you,
good.
it just has so many cool visual cues. Like he's sitting when they first start to try to do the surgery, and you see that one chain start shaking, and it's like, oh, okay, well, it just all has all of that horror movie
Yeah.
vibe to it.
And we referenced the scene earlier. Yeah, he asked him, he says, what are we going to call this guy? Dr. Octopus. Crap. Science Squid. Crap. Doctor Strange. Hey, that's not bad, but it's taken. So we get one of our first references there. Um, it's funny because when he wakes up, Doc Ock, meaning he realizes the inhibitor chip is complete, and it's damaged, it's completely destroyed. And I'm like, you thought it wasn't gonna be like again Christmas light. He says he's like they're talking, something's talking to me inside of my head. It's at that moment, Phil, we all realize, okay, this guy's not going to be responsible for his actions because they're controlling his thoughts, which is crazy.
Yes. Yes. I really enjoy the way that the arms move around him, and they like
Like
look visually
dogs.
like faces.
Yeah.
And I just love the way the arms look. I like the way that they
They look good
open up.
too, right?
Yeah, they open up to the wider like claw look, and then like they have that smaller opening that opens up so he can do smaller, more tedious things with them.
Yeah.
Like I think that I think everything with the arms and like all of the way that they designed them looks really good. But yeah, I mean, when he has like that monologue to himself and he's talking, he's like, the chip's destroyed. And then he goes into all this other stuff. He's like, but no, I did it right. I wasn't wrong. Everything was working.
Right. I just need to do it bigger. I know what
Yes.
happened. I didn't have enough stuff. I need more stuff. What? Yeah. Dude, what do you think about the villain not really being the villain? This is not one of those shades of gray, typical MCU, typical Marvel Comics villain where you can kind of empathize. This guy's not in control. Like he's by the end
Uh,
of the film, and when the arms are pretty much gone or destroyed or almost destroyed or whatever, and he realizes, and he doesn't even know what he's done at that point.
um, I think it works specifically because a big part of Spider-Man's role gallery, especially in the introduction of the character, is that they're all kind of depictions of not just mirrored versions of Peter, but they're like depictions of adults. And like, because of course, Spider-Man is a teenage hero. So to teenagers, you're rebelling against adults and what adults would do. So of course, if you're a teenager, you're a teenage superhero. One of your villains would be a teacher, right? Or
Right.
your father, your girlfriend's father, or all of these people like in your inner circle. And I think that's what makes Doc Ock work in this movie is that he, like I said earlier, he mirrors Peter in a lot of ways. He's a lot of what Peter aspires to be. And he has this conversation with him earlier about what you're supposed to do with intelligence, but at the same time, he's not Peter because he doesn't have Peter's moral code, and he doesn't have Peter's humility. And so that's a big part of what drives him in this movie is he has this ego like I am the one that could make sustainable energy, and even when he gets it wrong, he's like, no, I'm right because
Right.
I'm right. Everybody else is wrong. Even when Peter told him at the dinner table, like this isn't gonna work. I mean, he didn't say it that bad. He just gave him a suggestion, but he's like, no, I'm right. He's self indulgent in a way that Peter wouldn't be.
You're right. There is that element to it. It's almost like, why did the super soldier serum work on Steve? Because Steve was a good person first.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that that's definitely like I think that I get to redemption here, but at the same time, he's still a bad person here. Like I won't say that like even he's not in control of himself, but the love of your life died because you were trying to create this thing, and you didn't even take a second to think about that. You were just like, oh, well, I have to rebuild it.
Yeah, good point. But all he's focusing on is what he lost. Kind of like Harry, he becomes obsessed with what he lost and has to get back and get revenge, you know?
I mean, and exactly. I mean, that's how both of these things mirror each other. Because again, Harry is another analog for Peter in the sense that he has what Peter thinks that he wants. He has a dad that's successful. He has a great job, and he knows who he is. And he he has this guy that's in his life. Peter doesn't have that, but then you have this other mirrored heirs to it that Norman doesn't care about Harry.
Right. Of
He's
course.
in his life, but he doesn't care about him. And again, that's why you look at Ock and it's like, well, Ock has it together on the surface, but at the same time, he's got other things going on with him.
Yeah, it's like the grass is always greener, right? Be careful what you're wanting or what you think you want. Maybe not. It's not what you expect it to be for sure.
Yeah, and I
Um,
mean, yeah, to go back to that, analogy I made earlier with why his rogues gallery work. Of course, if you're a teenage hero, another one of your bad guys would be a guy that you considered your best friend that you're beefing with.
yeah, makes sense. You're right. It is sort of a high school clique thing happening here, where it's like all the people that have. Yeah, you're right. Totally. Um, how convenient, right? But honestly, it makes sense. His circle is very small. I mean, Peter's not exactly a man about town here. I mean, he keeps his circle small because he doesn't have time for anybody else. He barely has time for the circle itself, man.
For sure. And I mean, again, if we want to go into Homecoming, that's one of the things that makes the Vulture such a perfect villain in it. Because, of course, for the Parker luck to work, Peter gets the girl, and then at the same time, he shows up to the house, and it's the bad guy. he
Right,
cannot he cannot escape his life as Spider-Man. He cannot just get something good as Peter Parker. He just cannot escape being Spider-Man.
right. No matter what he does, he's bound to this thing. Still, I submit his life would be better. Maybe not for everybody around him, I guess, but for him, yeah, his life would be much better. So, um, what about the dialogue? Because I got to touch on this. The dialogue between MJ and Peter feels the most real of anything in this film. It doesn't feel forced to me. It like she is so in love with this guy, man. She wants him so bad, and she all but says those words and doesn't get to say them till the end. And he keeps her at a distance. Like, I don't know if I could do it. Like, again, the discussion of, is this any of this real or possible? At some point, I would have to pull her aside and say, there's something I can't tell you, and you have to trust me. You have any idea how much I want you in my life, but I can't freaking do it. I don't know if that
Yeah.
helped anything, but man, he's so guarded all the time. Do you think the dialogue between him and her works in those moments?
I think some of it is a little bit campy and a little bit melodramatic, but I think it works for what it's supposed to be. Um, and I think their chemistry is so good because if I remember correctly, weren't they dating in real life by the time the movie came out?
I think so. Good point.
Um, and so I think they just have great chemistry in several of the scenes. And I think just they do such a great job of doing this push and pull with these characters of, will they get together, won't they get together? And when they first talk in the backyard and they establish it, it's done really well. At the when he finally goes to play and they have that confrontation, it's handled well as well. When she's just like, okay, you came to my play and you think I'm just gonna not get married now,
Right.
and
Woo.
all of yeah, all of it's done so well. He's trying to talk to her without his glasses on, and he's straining it. It's all done so well. Yeah, I think the way they handle the romantic stuff in this movie is really good.
She says, I don't know you, and I can't keep thinking about you. Because he says, I've changed. She says, I don't know you, and I can't keep thinking about you. He tries poetry. He just starts off the top of his head because Octavius had told him poetry will get him. That'll get her every time. And at this point, it's over. It's completely over. Like, he's lost his powers. He's wearing glasses again because he couldn't see again. He's trying to get her back or get her, period. And she says no. Like, and
Oh,
she's flat out says she's engaged. He has to take pictures of it, like you said. At this point, I'm like, I'm catching the next bus out of town. I'm done. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I can't do this anymore. Like, my God, how does he not give up at this point?
oh my God! So of course we have to talk about him actually trying to go to the play and going and getting dressed up and going to get the flowers
Yes.
and getting on his moped, and then the car crashes into his moped and he does that awesome flip over the car. It's another one of those great scenes that you just forget how cool it is. And he makes it there late, and you have the scene of him dragging his broken moped home. um, but yeah, he, I think he has just made up his mind that this cannot work because he saw what he had to give up early on. I mean, he put her at such a risk in the first movie, and he just couldn't handle doing that again. Um, I mean, because there's such a great analog for us as comic fans of knowing what the Brooklyn Bridge did to him in the comics because Gwen actually died.
Yep.
And in this universe, Mary Jane doesn't die because she gets tossed off the bridge, but it comes pretty close. And he's just like, I just cannot put her in that position again.
Yeah. And again, he can't. He's the most tortured soul in the Marvel universe, and because because he's unique, he is still unique. Dude, they can do any teenage superhero story they want to and call it whatever. There will never be another Peter Parker because he is the most tortured individual in the entire Marvel universe. Because no matter what he does, he can't get it right. He just can't get it right. The closest thing, the DC doesn't have a Spider-Man. That's it. The closest thing I've ever seen in DC is the TV version of Barry Allen the Flash, where no
Yep.
matter what Barry does, he can't get it right. His friends get killed or they're in danger, or he hurts them and doesn't realize he's done it. He makes terrible decisions, but people still love him for it. And he screws up constantly. And his life did not get better because he got fast. It's the same thing here. And I'm sorry, but not that I've never read this, but if I'm a fly on the writer's room in The Flash, I'm thinking from season one, they're all going, yeah, let's go for a Spider-Man vibe here. Because I swear the show feels like that to me. There's no
Oh,
one like Spider-Man, dude.
oh, it's very close to Spider-Man. It's that everything they do with Barry Allen in that show is very close to Peter Parker. I mean, of course, there are so many other um, shows or companies that have tried to do the teenage hero thing since Spider-Man. I mean, I think one of the closest I've also seen is Static in the comics and in his own television show. It's very close to Spider-Man. McDuffie had said that he took a lot of inspiration from Spider-Man. The other
Mm.
one, I don't know if you realize how close Batman Beyond is to Spider-Man.
Ah,
Terry
very true.
McGinnis is very, very similar to Spider-Man. I mean, even the way that he gets his whole origin of him making a mistake and his dad died, it's the same. It even his rogue gallery. He has a guy that does illusions and stuff, basically Mysterio. He has um he has a character that's like flexible and has like a very symbiotic, it's close to Venom. He's
Very
got that
true.
he's got that he's got that character that was the hunter that was trying to chase him down, Craven. That it's so close. I noticed it one day when I did this big rewatch of Batman Beyond. I mean, there are so many things in that show that are nods to Spider-Man. Like, it's undeniable.
Man, maybe we were comparing and contrasting the wrong heroes earlier. It's funny how we come full circle back to Batman. No, you're right, 100% right. A lot of similarities there. So yeah, honestly, I got the play scenes kind of interwoven together, because the first time he can't get there, and the second time he does get there, his powers are gone. That's when she basically tells him, "Hey, I'm engaged now. Things are different, and can't do this." Neither time is good for him. I mean, both of them end badly. The trash guy that brings the suit to the Bugle gets $100. He says, "I'll give you 50." And he's like, "Well, how about 100? $100? It's highway robbery. Pay the man." Like, he's so fast all the time,
Yeah. Oh man, that's another great. When we talk about the dialogue between them, that is a great line of, after all this time, I thought you were my best friend. This person has came to see my movie. My mother's come. Even my dad came. And after all this time, you're just an empty seat.
That's good stuff.
Just great stuff. And of course, before we get to that, when he decides to not be Spider-Man, we have one of the highlights of this movie, in my opinion, and that's the raindrops keep falling on my head montage, which is the perfect depiction of the Parker luck. It is, to me, there hasn't been a better depiction of it. I mean, it doesn't matter what he does. He decides he doesn't want to be Spider-Man anymore, and he's just Peter Parker, and nothing goes right for him still. He still does what he thinks is right, and nothing will go right for him.
Right. Yeah, the first thing that happens is he stumbles and trips and almost, like, he falls on the sidewalk.
It's done so well. And again, it's one of those things where it's so cheesy, but it fits his character perfectly.
That's very Sam Raimi also, that whole scene. Very much him. Very, like, you put a song in there and you ham it up, and the scene ends on a freeze frame of him, which is so weird,
It's so funny. It looks like the end of "You're Gonna Make It After All."
Oh my God!
And
Yeah,
jumps in the air and throws the hat in the air and it freezes.
Yes.
It just looks exactly like that. It's just such a hilarious, like, visual gag that it feels like it shouldn't fit, but it's just so funny. And again,
awesome.
That's one of those things where I knock back at that. People are like, "Oh, but he's not funny in the movie," and Spider-Man is not funny. He's supposed to be funny. There's a lot of humor in this movie. There's the part where he's sitting on the steps waiting for Mary Jane to come out, and the violinist is playing. And he's sitting there looking, and he has this look on his face.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Because the lady can't sing and she's trying, but he's like, his eyes are getting real big, It's like, oh, that's so good. Because she shows up twice in the film. After he quits, they find his suit, and she's singing the part of "Where Have You Gone To, Spider-Man?" Oh, that's good stuff. Yeah, so I'm going through this, and so we get from that, we see everything's fine until he tries to get MJ, and she's not having it, and then he sees a kid, probably no older than he was when he first got bitten, in the alley. And it's not just a scene just to be having it. Those guys legit look like they're roughhousing the crap out of this kid. And he just turns around because he can't do anything now, or he doesn't think he can. So we start to see Phil drawbacks of giving this up. Because once again, it's like the old idea of, heavy is the head that wears the crown. I don't want to be king, but the kingdom demands that I be king. I have to do this. Like, he doesn't want the life. He doesn't want it. But he has to do it. Like, and he's getting reminded. It's like the universe is trying to correct itself by telling him, Look, you could have helped that kid. He's getting beat up in broad daylight. People walking by, they don't care. You could stop this, and you won't do it.
Well, but see, the other thing about that is the adage is, with great power comes great responsibility. And his
Hmm.
belief is, I don't have my power anymore, so I
Ah,
don't have to do anything. But that's not what makes him Spider-Man. The thing is, you could do something, you can take the responsibility to do something right, whether you have powers or not.
mhm.
And I think that goes into the great adage that we get from, again, the Tom Holland film. And it's like, you know, I'm nothing without that suit. And it's like, okay, well, if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it. And it's the
Right,
same thing. It's like,
right.
if you're not a hero without your powers, then who are you? And there's two scenes where he does this, where when he's watching the cars fly by and he hurries up and eats the hot dog, and then the scene where he's standing there watching that guy get beat up. He didn't have to have powers to run in and try and run those guys off. He just decides, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to get involved. I'm just going to duck my head down.
Yeah, he just has that expression like, I can't do it. Yeah, I
I'm
can't help
not
him.
going to take this burden on. Let someone
Right,
else do it. I
right.
don't want this anymore. I want to be like everyone else.
Um, we also, amidst all this, we get the scene where Peter finally admits to Aunt May that he is responsible for Ben's death. And again, um, can't say enough good things about Rosemary Harris here, who is just pitch perfect as Aunt May. Dude, there's no music, there's no dramatic music, there's no nothing. It is dead quiet. You can't hear the trees rustling, you can't hear the birds singing. There's nothing except this room with these two people in it. And when he's telling her this and she pulls her hand away and gets up to leave, man, it's like getting punched in the face. Like, oh my God, didn't have to say a word to him. And man, it's what a powerful, that may be for me the most powerful moment in this whole film.
Yeah, I mean, you hear her walk up the stairs and slam the door, and that's all
Yep.
you get.
Yep.
And I mean, again, I mean, we can go into whether Toby is not the Spider-Man people want. He did some acting in that scene, bro.
Oh yeah.
He, I mean, when he's telling her everything, and all of this stuff is just coming out, and tears are welling up in his eyes because he knows everything that he lost because he made a mistake, and it's been so hard to live with it, and he hasn't told anyone. And you get all of the pain and guilt in that moment, and he just conveys it so perfectly.
Yeah, it's great stuff. He's so good in that. He's a very good actor. I don't know that he gets enough credit for just
No,
him
I
as an
don't think
actor.
he does. I don't think he does. I think he does some great acting in this movie in particular. I mean, I think he does great acting in all three movies, but I think some of the scenes in this, he's doing some of his best acting.
What about uh, what about the Daily Bugle headline? Crime up 75%. Where is Spider Man? That's on the cover of Jameson's paper. Like,
Yes.
wow, 75%. I mean, holy God, dude. You think Batman's stopping 75% in Gotham City? I bet Batman's not stopping 15% in freaking Gotham City, man. That
Well,
city just feels infested no matter if he's there or not, you know?
I mean, well, the other thing that we didn't talk about is, of course, at the beginning of the movie, and he does all this stuff. We watch him um, stop what he's doing. He risks his job to stop a crime.
Yep.
He misses the play to stop a crime. And he's doing all this stuff, and all this stuff is this bad. And then when he goes home, he turns on the police scanner, and he's listening for crimes, even when he's at home.
Right.
It just never stops. Um, and I think the reason it's believable that the crime rates go up is because he's a lower level hero. He's not a guy um, like in MCU movies that's doing all these intergalactic threats and fighting all these massive supervillains. He is also doing all of the smaller things, um, stopping muggings, stopping carjackings, intervening in the car chases, and you know saving people from burning buildings. And that just, you see what he means to New York City. And I think that's another thing. Like, I feel like this movie is just so grounded in New York.
Yeah.
If you ever been to New York and you see some of the stuff in this film, it's like, yep, that's New York. Besides a very specific thing that I'm sure we'll get into later, that is not New York, and I know it's not New York because I'm looking at it and I'm like, no, it's Chicago.
Yeah, it again, kids, there's consequences to what you do. He gives it up. Things are going to crap. He runs into a burning building. And again, Phyllis goes back to the whole notion of, does he need the powers to be a hero? He can still do the right thing. And it, to me, it's a callback of the first film where I think, wasn't the goblin in a burning building? And
Yes.
he was, but this time I'm like, oh God, it's a voice we can't see in the closet. Is this going to be Doc Ock? What's going on?
He's under that cover screaming.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, there's so many great visual cues when he runs into the building. He tries to use his shoulder to break the door, and it doesn't break. And that's another time where we see him use his willpower and go, no, I have to do this, and he kicks the door in.
Right.
And I mean, it's the same thing as him having to lift a heavy weight or something big drops on him, and he pushes it off. It's that same, he wills himself to do it. There's so much. I mean, only he would run in there and try and save a kid, and then almost ends up dying himself, and the kid helps him back up, and then he gets outside, and the firefighter goes, "Yeah, the only one person to get up out at the end," and you see him turn and look to the camera. It's like, man, if I had just not given up being Spider-Man and did what I was supposed to do, I could have saved him.
Yeah, and he because the firefighter tells him, he's like, "You got some guts, kid," I think is what he says. And then the other guy comes out and he says, "Some poor soul got trapped on the 4th floor. He never made it out."
Yeah.
So again, dude, this is Peter gets that look like, I could have done something if I hadn't have. Oh man.
But I mean, this is like, it's so Spider-Man. It's like Spider-Man is the kind of guy. He's the kind of hero that doesn't always save everyone, and that's such a big part of his stories in the comics. Whether that be Gwen and everything, that no matter how good he was, he couldn't save her, and he made a mistake. He lost her. There's so many other people in his life, Captain the Wolf, Gwen Stacy's dad. So many other people died on his watch, and I don't feel like that's as big of a thing in other comics. Like, I feel like he's one of the few heroes that we see make so many mistakes and have to pay for it.
Yeah, and I mean, he can't be everything to everybody, but I mean, I do think that the gravity of all this. Again, man, the responsibility. I keep going back to that freaking word, Spider-Man. How can you not? The responsibility of being a hero. Yeah, just insane. I mean, just everything he has to do. Crazy, man. He wants his whole life. And he even says, "Why can't I have what I want? Why don't I get a chance? Like, why can't I do what I want to do?" And then the funny scene with Ursula coming over to give him chocolate cake and milk, and just out of the blue, and kind of watches him eat it, which is weird, I guess. And it's almost like, man, she really likes him, and like you can tell she really likes him. So
yeah, but it just goes into who he is. It's like, she doesn't know anything about him other than he lives next door and he's struggling, and he's just the guy that you want to root for. You want him to win. You want him to succeed, even if you don't know that he's this superhero. He's just a guy that, even when Kirk Connors is talking to him, it's like, I know that you're smart, but you have to get it together. It's like, what are you doing? And I feel like there's more than one person in this movie that is just like, no, you got to get it together. Like, because I want you to succeed. I want you to win. And I feel like that's kind of what it is in that moment. It is a very weird scene, but it is like, I feel like the undertone of it is Ursula looking at him like, what's your story, dude? Like,
right.
why are you always late? Why don't you ever have any money? Here, I've got something for you. I've got cake for you. Just take this from me. And it's like, I just want you to have something. I mean, even when he's talking to Betty and she gave him the advance, But I feel like there's so many women in his life that see this guy, and it's like he's a good guy, and I can't understand why he can't get it together.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, he's got such a good heart. I mean, you can't hide that. Um, Aunt May finally lets Peter off the hook, tells him that he was brave for telling her the truth. He asked if she says she's getting rid of some things, and he says, "What about my comics?" She goes, "I gave away those dreadful things." Like that's good stuff, man.
um, oh man, like I said earlier, the speech to him about what it means to be a hero, it's just so good. I think she does some great acting in that moment. And I think all of the other stuff around it, the unspoken stuff in that scene, um, I feel like there's something that happens in the scenes where he's Spider-Man and he helps her.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like you kind of get this notion like she knows, but she's not saying.
Yep, I agree.
And we also didn't get to the, he he saves her and takes her to the ground and goes, well, hey, we did it. And she goes, what do you mean we?
Yeah. Yeah.
um
We showed him.
but yeah, it just, I think in that moment, I think she says it without saying that, I get it, you made a mistake and it took a lot for you to admit that you made a mistake. But at the same time, I see what you're doing, and I'm proud of you. I can't, she didn't have to say, I know you're Spider-Man, but I felt like in so many words, she was saying, I'm proud of you.
I agree. That's one of those scenes that I came away from going, does she know? Like it just felt like she knew. Peter gets on the rooftop because he's wanting to get himself back. And it felt like Miles trying to pick a building, and he picks the taller of the or the shorter of the buildings to go what dive off of, I guess.
Oh man, him jumping off the building and yelling, I'm back, and then slamming slamming all the way down to the ground and slamming onto his car.
Oh man.
My back.
Yeah, my
My
back.
back.
And then of course it's not over. Because as he slowly walks, he puts his hand on the car to balance himself and the alarm goes off. Like, of course it does. You know what I mean? Because it's him.
All really funny stuff. But that's again why I'm like, this movie is has a lot of great humor in it.
And then, again, Phil, another moment where I came away from it going, wait a minute, does she know MJ's with John Jameson together? And she asks him to put his head back so she can kiss him. And then she gets this look on her face, and you're like, I'm like, oh my God, does she know that it's that, you know? And then of course we go to the one maybe the most epic scene in this whole movie, maybe for me, is when MJ and Peter are in the restaurant, and she's basically saying, "Hey, well, remember that stuff you pitched to me that night outside the play? Well, I thought about it, and I'm in. Let's do this." And he's like, "Whoa, hold on," because he's Spider-Man again, and so he can't do it anymore. I was wrong. He's letting her down again. Unbelievable. Telling her he can't be there for her. She asks him if he loves her. And he says, no, I don't. I'm like, dude, shut up. Are you kidding me right now? That's gutting in that moment. Like you don't know the car's coming unless you've seen the film. But
Yeah.
man, once again, he's having to put his guard up with her.
Um there's something so meta about the scene where she's with John and she tries to recreate the kiss. Um, it might not be that she knows that Peter is Spider-Man in that moment, but at the same time, she's looking at like, okay, I mean, you do have the scene of her kissing Peter at the end of Spider-Man 1, and
Yep.
she turns around and looks.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
and so you have that tied to this, but at the same time, the thing that I think that is meta about it is John is what you would expect Spider-Man to be. He's this big, tall, handsome, you know, astronaut. He's a hero. He's what you would think a hero looks like. And so this looks like the perfect scenario for her. Like I have everything that I should want. This guy is, there's women all over the city that would probably love to be with him. And so it's like I have to check I have to check to see if it's what I want, because I had this perfect kiss, which they referenced earlier. And so she tries to recreate it with him, and he's like, I'm on the moon again. And she's looking like, it's not right. It's not our kiss. It's not our thing. And so when she tries to recreate it with Peter in a restaurant, and he's sitting there and and they're getting close to do it, and they have the epic spider sense. It just looks so cool every time I see it, and it zooms out. I don't think any other Spider-Man movie has handled his spider sense as well.
Yeah.
And he jumps in, the car comes in, so cool. I mean, sometimes I watch the movie and I'm just like, all right, well, you were supposed to go and try and get Peter to tell you where Spider-Man was, and your answer to do that is to throw a whole car into this restaurant. How did you know that they were going to survive? You just threw a car to the restaurant. But of course, it sets up the cool scene of him, dodging the car and like narrowly dodging it. But just that whole sequence of events of them having that conversation, that is for writers out there, that is how you pace a scene. You have all of the stuff in his personal life that's coming to a culmination with her, and then like right in the middle of it, his life as Spider-Man comes literally crashing through the window. And then we get of course, all of the monologue between him and Ock, and then we have the fantastic scene of him realizing his powers are coming back, and he can see again, and the glasses hit the ground.
Yes.
And it just goosebumps every time I see it, and he runs off. It's just so good.
Yeah, so great, man. That in that moment, yeah, like you said, he suddenly has his sight back because determination is back because now he has to save her again. Jameson knows that MJ's been kidnapped. He admits, which is crazy. He admits that Spider-Man was a hero. I turned the whole city against him, and then all of a sudden the webbing shoots in and takes the suit, and he's like, he's a thief, and he just turns on him again for stealing
Man,
his own suit back.
he took my suit. Have you ever noticed when he jumps out the window that's at the penthouse, the glass for the window is shaped like a web?
Oh my God, no. Really?
Yes, it's shaped like a web. If you go back and look at it, the way that the camera is pointing up, looking at it, it looks like a web.
That's awesome.
And this goes back to when I say that I believe that Spider-Man is one of the greatest comic book movies ever. There is, we know in wrestling, there's the hot tag, right? There's the comeback. There's the Hulk up moment where the baby face has his moment and he gets back into the match. And there's this rush of euphoria that runs over us as wrestling fans if you're in a crowd that makes us want to cheer and jump up and, clap for the baby face to get him back into the match. And when I say that this part coming from him, realizing his sight was back and dropping the glasses and running off into the distance, and him getting the suit back and smashing through the paper that says I'm back on it. I'm telling you that I feel like a kid every time I watch it because I always want to jump up and cheer every time I see it. And there's several scenes in this movie where it happens. When he stops the car that's flying at that crowd and he webs it, and the woman that looks up, Joy Bryant, looks up and she sees it's a web, and then she yells, "Go, Spidey, go!"
Oh, that's good stuff. You're right. There's a lot of hulking up moments here and a lot of moments of, like you said, the hot tag. It's great stuff, man. The comeback is happening. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing about a movie, forget just comic book film. The whole thing about any good story is you got to hook the audience. You got to find a way to make them connect. You got to find a way to draw them in and make them care about what the story that you're telling, care about something that you're trying to get across. And yeah, you're caring about it when you're literally coming up out of your seat wanting to
Yeah, I
cheer.
mean, this movie has great peaks and valleys to it. There's so many great lows for him where it's like, oh man, like you're gonna lose the girl. Like this isn't gonna happen, right? You can't let them do this to you. Or even when Harry slaps him, it's like, oh, come on, man, do something. And so when he does have his moment where he's just like, no, I have to do something about this. And he never raises up out of anger at any of the other stuff that happens until she's in danger.
Right. Yeah, it's a good take. Good call. We'll talk about a scene that really gets you going. The train scene is so freaking good. It's very much like the bridge scene from the first Spider-Man where the New Yorkers defend him and throw stuff at the Goblin. And it's the same thing here because Spider-Man is New York.
Yes.
Uh, period. He is so New York, dude. Like this whole train scene. What about again, I was criticizing the mechanics of something earlier. Not a bad way to stop this train. And if you're that character, what else can you do at that point except the way he did it?
I feel like the fight scene on a train is not only one of the greatest action sequence in any comic book movie. I feel like him stopping the train is one of the most iconic moments in any comic book film. Um, I mean, even when we're just watching Ock climb up that building and it zooms out into Spider-Man's lens
Yeah.
and he swings up on him and they have that whole monologue, let's have a talk, and they're fighting down the building and they land on a train. And that's what I was getting at earlier, that I know that Chicago, there are no elevated trains in New York.
Ah.
There's only one city in the country that still has elevated trains, and that is Chicago.
So
So
why'd
when
they
I
throw
looked,
that in?
well, they wanted to do the fight scene on the elevated train, so they had to film it here. So I was looking at it, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, all right, that's the blue line. That's the loop. Like that's what it's called here in Chicago. Like the train goes around in a literal loop around the downtown area, and it's called the loop. So when I was watching it, I was like, this is this is Chicago. Especially once I got older, I'm like, yeah, this is Chicago. There's so many things that the train rides by that I'm like, that's a Chicago building. Um, but just the visual of them fighting on an elevated train is just so cool. There's so many moments in this thing, them fighting on the side of the train and Spider Sense triggers and he does that move and like narrowly gets hit by this train and immediately dodges it and it zooms out. It's so beautifully shot, man. It's so cool. There's so many beats in that fight that are just so cool. I trying to throw him off the train and he slides in between that little crack in that bridge and comes out and continues the fight. Man, it's just so many cool moments in it. And so when he does the coward way out, like all villains do, and tries to snatch the control out of there and runs away and lets the train become a runaway train, and he's like, how can I stop this? And the whole time he doesn't realize his mask isn't on. Which again is just such a Spider-Man thing. It's never about like, man, my protecting my identity is more important. It was always like, these people are in danger, I have to save them. And so when he just does this fantastic feat of strength and shoots all the webs out and stops the train on his own, and he just completely gives out because he gave everything he could for those people, and then they save him. It's such a beautiful moment. And I mean, even when he gets back on the train and we have the moment of they see who he is, and the adults are like, well, he's just a kid.
Yeah.
He's just like, he could be just like anyone. And then none of them are like, none of them do what we would expect people to do. They don't give up in him. They don't do, what the cynical humans believe. Like, oh well, they're just gonna turn on him. They all protect him. They
Right.
all protect him. They protect his identity.
The kids find the mask, and one kid says, "We won't tell nobody. It's good to have you back, Spider-Man." And they
It's
all just,
so
oh my god.
when I saw it the first time and they gave him his mask back and he stumbled back up to his feet, I cried because I was just like, he because he get you see so much throughout this movie how much he gives up to be Spider-Man, and for him to see in that moment that he is appreciated and he's loved is what he had been looking for the entire movie.
Very true. Because in the books, most of the time, the cops are after him, the press is after him, the politicians are after him. But for the normal working class Joe in New York City, ask that guy if he's glad that the dude dressed like a spider saved him from getting his wife getting mugged in a back alley. Of course he is. I mean, it's different, different take.
Yeah, and I mean there are two times that it happens in the movie where someone else does something for him And it's like, you don't have to carry this all on your own. You don't have to do it. You can accept love. You don't have to carry around all this guilt.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of those moments. And then, of course, towards the end of the movie.
Oh yeah. Um, it's it's crazy what's happening here. I mean, again, he's got MJ, uh, and Doc does all this stuff, and basically he does the unthinkable. He gets Spider-Man. He's got him, and he delivers him to Harry. Harry's plan, because he's got this big freaking medieval dagger thing, whatever this thing is. I don't know what it's like. Look, it's like the knife that Jack the Ripper used or something. Who knows? But here's this guy, Phil, this rich kid. The world done me wrong, and he's going to be a murderer now. Like, I didn't question it because I knew he was filled with rage, and he obsessed over this for 2 years, I guess. In the movie timeline was 2 years he obsessed over this. So, I guess it would make sense that he'd want to kill him, but let's forget that there's DNA there, Harry. And how are you going to explain this? The dead body. What are you going to do here, Harry? But dude, Franco doesn't get enough credit, because when he takes that mask off and his reaction is freaking awesome, man.
Yes.
I love it.
I don't know if you noticed, but it directly mirrors, it ties all the way back to at the beginning of the movie when he says, if you could get the guy to kill Uncle Ben, you would. And it directly mirrors when Peter takes the guy's mask off and he realizes it's the guy that he let go.
Oh.
It's like the same kind of scenario. And I've debated in my head, because he could have gotten out of the chains at any point. We saw that he could broken out at any point.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like he wanted to let go of that burden, and he allowed Harry to unmask him. I feel like he did it on purpose because he needed him to see, like, look, you can't hold on to this. I'm your friend.
Yeah. Isn't that something? And when he says, he's looking at him, and Harry's like shocked and everything. And Peter's asking Harry where Doc is keeping him. Harry doesn't know anything about it. And he tells him, "You killed my father." And Peter says, instead of denying it, because he didn't deny it, he just said, "There are bigger things happening than you and I, or than you and me." And I'm like, wow. Like when you see on Harry's face when he tells him it's MJ, he's like, "I didn't know that,"
Well, but see, that's what makes Peter Peter. He could have in that moment said a number of things. He could have said, "No, your father died because of himself, because he was a terrible man."
Right.
He allowed him to still believe in his dad. He would rather hate him than hate his dad. And again, that is what makes him so great. That's what makes Peter Parker so humble and so amazing. It's like, I know what you need your father to be for you because I didn't have a dad. So I cannot let you not believe in your dad.
So he's taking someone else's burden upon himself.
I mean, but we saw that at the end of Spider-Man 1 when he gets impaled by the glider. He tried to save him. But when he gets killed, he didn't stand there and go, "Oh, well, had this coming. I tried to save you." He took his body back home because he wanted to give him a proper burial, and he wanted Harry to have that. And he had basically got punished for doing the right thing in that moment. And again, he could have taken the low road again, and he still was like, "No, I can't deny that I killed him. I won't get into that because I can't tell you who your dad is."
Right, because Harry still doesn't know.
Yeah, he never at once said, "No, your dad was the Green Goblin." He never said any of that.
Harry, buddy, your dad's kind of a douche. I gotta be honest. Like, I'm sorry he's dead, but
I just think that there's something so powerful about him deciding in that moment, like, I have to protect you from this.
Yeah.
Because you're my friend. And I mean, it's also, and that's why I say the way their friendship is handled in this movie is just, it's one of the great, like, undertones of this movie. I mean, even when he sends Ock to go and interrogate him to get Spider-Man. He immediately tells him, like, don't hurt Peter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I forgot to bring that up. As an afterthought. Don't hurt Peter. Wow. And it's the same guy. He didn't know that. Yeah. Yeah. Nice twist there. Well, this is taking us to the climax of the film. And Doc has MJ, Spidey shows up, they do the fight thing again, another great fight scene. This time, Doc stabs his arms to this tubing that has like this electricity, knocks him backward. The reactor is going again. Once again, it's starting to become unstable, kids. The whole city, I think Peter's words, half New York's going to get destroyed by this thing. And then, of course, as we said earlier, when Doc Ock wakes up, he doesn't know what he's done. And Peter's like, look at what's happening. You got to shut it down. And Doc says, I can't. And at that point, the thing still has him, I guess. He's like, I can't destroy it. I won't. And then Peter reminds him that the intelligence is to be used for the good of mankind. The arms have turned on him. He says, sometimes you have to be ready to give up the thing you want the most, even your dreams. And the arms doesn't like this, man. They're not fans of it. And Doc tries to take control. And he's like, no, I'm in control. I'm in charge now. And then Peter's like, great, you're back. How do I stop it? Doc's like, can't be stopped. I'm like, oh, come on. Give me something. Hey, go flip that button. But there's no redemption here for Ock because he has to sacrifice himself.
There's a great visual of him, pulling out all the cords, and then it zooms out of the sun getting even bigger, like the fusion getting even bigger, and Spider-Man has his hands raised, like, what do I do? It's such a cool shot from behind. And his speech to Ock is, again, this is why Peter's a hero, because in that moment he doesn't have to save him. He doesn't have to give him that speech. He doesn't have to try and reason with him. He could have just kept beating him up.
Right.
But he tried to reason with him, and that's why I always kind of buck back at people that are like, Doc Ock had a redemption. And it's like, is it his redemption, or is it so much that Peter talked him down and said, look, you're better than this. You're the one that told me, and they did the great callback, Parker, brilliant but lazy.
Right.
And again, call back to, like you said, what he told him earlier, and you have a duty to mankind. And I think this movie is just so well written because they reward you for so many of the scenes earlier in the movie. And it's like, look, you had everything, right? You had everything, and you gave it up to try and still build this thing. Do what's right.
Yeah, like you said, he has to remind him that he's a good guy, that you don't need to do this. You've got to stop it. Yeah, good call. I love the idea of there being like a kinship here between the two, and I never really thought about it until you brought it up on this show. But it's so right, like the fact that this could have been him, like it was a life that Peter wanted, and so maybe we get a glimpse at the end here of what things could be like if Peter had that life, but decided to use his powers for the wrong thing. It all could just end horribly at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, Peter is telling Doc Ock what he learned throughout the entire movie. It's like you have responsibility here. He's in a way telling him what Ben told him.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and again, we've seen Peter give up everything for this. We've seen him give up so much to be Spider-Man. And so he knows better than anybody that you can't always have what you want. Sometimes you have to sacrifice things to do what's right.
Well, speaking of sacrifice, Dr. Octavius does it here and tells Peter that it can't be stopped unless the river can drown it. Just drown it. He says, I'll do it. Because Peter's going to go do it without even thinking about it. And he's like, no, I'll do it. And, of course, we get to see the great moment. MJ sees him without the mask for the first time. He saves her from the falling wall, which is another great moment. Because they're just talking to each other like they're having a normal conversation. He's like, this is really heavy. That's good stuff, man.
Oh, yeah, we get to see him again do one of those great moments of willpower and thrusting the wall off of the top of his shoulders.
Oh.
and swinging off to save her. I mean, that's another great visual of him swinging away and the building is collapsing and falling into the water. Um, yeah, I can't say enough. There's so many perfect story beats and so many great character moments in this thing. Um, and her putting two and two together, and him telling her like, we can never be. And you have every right to think that's the end of the movie.
Yeah. Isn't that something? Um, I love that stuff. He's got the huge web. He spun the huge web so she can just kind of lay there and hang out. And she tells him that she thinks she always knew he was Spider-Man, which we kind of figured too. And he says, Spider-Man will always have enemies. I can't let you take that risk. He says, I'll always be Spider-Man. You and I can never be. And like, she's upset, but she knows. Like, how can she fight it at this point? John Jameson shows up. And to your credit about him being a good guy and being a hero, you see the way he jumped from
Yes.
like that dock or whatever it was to that platform to go up the ladder. I'm like, dude, this guy is not bad, man.
I mean, but it's the nod. It's the nod to the audience of this is everything that she should want.
Right.
And he's everything that Peter is not.
Yeah, totally. But hey, man, you can't pick who you fall in love with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about here. So then we get this wackadoodle scene with Harry back at the mansion where he's still holding the dagger for whatever reason. He hears something. Of course, it's the great Willem Dafoe being as creepy as only he can be. He's laughing, and I'm thinking, okay, is Harry hallucinating? Like, he must be. He must be losing his mind. And he tells Harry that he's alive in him. He swore he'd make Spider-Man pay. He says, Harry, he's like, Peter's my friend. No one wants him. He's like, avenge me. And Harry says, no, throws the dagger through the mirror, discovers the goblin's lair, sees the pumpkin bombs, the glider, and everything. I mean, that's one way to do it. It sets up part 3, I guess. And, whatever.
What I like about this scene is there's two ways to look at it. Harry could be drunk.
Sure.
But then the other part about it is he's kind of having this mental breakdown because he's obsessed about what would happen if he got the guy that killed his dad all this time. Again, it's such a great way to mirror Peter in the first movie. Is he's obsessed about what he would do in that moment. And I mean, we see it twice. I mean, because May had a line towards the beginning of the movie, and she says, if I had the moment with the guy in front of me who killed Ben, I don't know what I would do." And she's confronted with it because she has Peter in front of her in that moment, and she doesn't want to hurt Peter. And it's the same thing with Harry. He has the moment as well. And then you get this you get this whole scene with his dad, and it's kind of like he has this moment of realizing, like, all right, if Peter killed my dad, what does that mean? And so then you get this, and then you get the great shot of him in the bunker, and it zooms out, and he's standing with the glider and the helmet and everything. All of that stuff is really well shot. I don't know. I was a fan of how they handled this. It's totally fan service, but I liked it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy the scene. I don't like what it sets up later, but I enjoy the scene.
But again, I don't want to shoot Spider-Man 3 too much bail, but that initial fight scene at the beginning between Harry in the Goblin suit, well, his version of the Goblin suit towards the beginning of Spider-Man 3 is great. That fight is great. The second fight they have in the bunker is also great.
Yeah, I'll give you that. I can't be upset about that. Well, of course, this takes us to the wedding day. MJ does not want to do this. Doesn't care about the hair. Doesn't care about the makeup. Doesn't want to be there. We get the scene where they play the wedding march. She doesn't come down. Just sends a note. John drops it. We can imagine what's on the note. And then we get another Sam Raimi scene where MJ is running with a smile on her face as people are watching her run. And again, it felt like a very Sam Raimi moment to me. Sort of
Yeah.
over the top, like you're laughing, you're happy. How do you know he's not going to turn you down again? Like, but it's all good. And he tries to turn her down again. She's in the doorway and he's trying to what?
Um, it's such a great visual of her running in her wedding dress, and then you get her literally standing in the door in her wedding dress and trying to talk to him, and then she gives the great line of, I've always been on your side. I've always been here. It's like, let me be here for you. Let me save you.
Yeah, I posted this entire scene on Facebook last night because once I watched it, I went back and rewatched it like 6 times, and it never loses its impact. Kirsten Dunst is a great MJ, and I think that she proved and earned her paycheck in this scene because she is freaking phenomenal. And he doesn't have to say anything. He says a little bit. She is awesome because she's got
It's
that
a
look on her face. Oh, so good.
Yeah, it's a very heartfelt scene, and
Yes.
it's just such a great culmination of everything from the first movie and everything in this movie. And everything she says to him, it's like, you just don't have to do this all on your own. You don't have to keep everything a secret from everyone. You don't have to. It's like, let me be here for you.
She says, I can't survive without you, which is, I'm going to tell you something out there, guys. You ever have a woman say that to you? Get her. Don't let her go. Because, man, how many women are ever going to say that to you? That's a keeper right there, buddy. Unless she's been stalking you and it's a whole other conversation. But I can't survive without you. That's huge. And he says, you shouldn't be here. And she says, a great line, can't you respect me enough to let me make my own decision? I want to face the risk with you. It's wrong that we should only be half alive and half ourselves. And when she said that, I thought of the classic Spider-Man Spidey senses face where he's like half his face is the mask and half is Peter. And that's what it made me think of. So half ourselves. That's good stuff. Because she basically says, here I am standing in your doorway. I've always been standing in your doorway. Isn't it about time somebody saved your life? And he
It's
thanks
yeah,
her. Oh my
it
God.
it's such a great scene, and I mean, when you take in the she's the only person in his life that have seen, both sides of him, because you can look at it as Spider-Man has saved her several times. She has seen him as a hero as Spider-Man. She had this perfect kiss with him. And then at the same time, she knows him more than anybody else does, because he other than Harry, she's his closest friend.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
So
And she,
she knows the best of him as Spider-Man and Peter Parker.
yeah, no doubt about it. And she's about to see a whole lot more because, whoa, Spider Man's here. And best line of the movie by far, the police sirens are in the distance. He stops kissing her, he looks back at her, and she says, go get him, Tiger. Oh my
Is
God.
is that the first time she's used Tiger in the movies?
Don't hold me to that, but I want to say yes,
I
dude.
I
Oh,
I think it is, and I think just that the web slinging after that scene is just so beautifully shot. It's so triumphant. It's just such a feel good moment. It's yeah. I'm telling you, Spider-Man 2 is one of those movies where I don't care how many times I watch it, I always pop for the high notes. I
yeah.
always get super excited and emotional for the moments you're supposed to. And it's just like one of those movies that it's just pure joy watching it, because all of the rewarding parts are just so rewarding.
Yep. Yeah, you're 100% right. And I do remember watching this in the theater. And when she said the go get him, Tiger, true fanboys in that crowd howled because it was like, yeah, just that. That's the MJ we know. That's the one I grew up reading. And it's just such good stuff. What do you think about the moment that the camera goes back to her? Was that was that needed? Could they have just let it go at that? And if it went back to her, couldn't she have just been smiling? I mean, isn't that something they chose to go that route?
I mean, you do have to look at it realistically. She gave up marriage to what appeared to be the perfect guy, and you're putting yourself in a scenario where you're always going to come second to his responsibility,
Right.
and that might not be something she was ready for. But she had to make the leap.
Um, I was so pumped up after watching this movie again for the first time in years. I got a lot of notes with the F word in it because I was so happy. Effing brilliant, effing great. Because I just was and I am, and I just love this movie so much. Um, Here's what I was left with. The last note I typed or wrote was, should Sam Raimi have done the Tom Holland Spider-Man movie? I
I
know it's
mean,
different, but come on, man.
I am looking forward to what he's going to do with Doctor Strange. And I'm of the belief I would love to see him direct something Spider-Man related again someday. I just feel like it has to happen, even if it's just like some kind of short. I feel like he has to do something with Spider-Man again,
Yes.
because I feel like he, in my mind, is the definitive Spider-Man director. Um, that doesn't mean I'm one of those purists that goes, "Oh, there are no other good Spider-Man movies." Of course, there are other good Spider-Man movies, but I still feel like Spider-Man 2 is the best. Like, it's so hard to top it.
And honestly, we've come full circle with Raimi because, as you said, he is going to direct or is directing Multiverse of Madness, in which we expect to see Tom Holland. We expect to see possibly Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. Maybe even Kirsten Dunst, although we don't know for sure. All kinds of rumors. This thing's taken on a life of his own, Phil, and it's sounding a lot like Flash with the multiverse happening. I mean, insane to me, and I'm here for both of them if I'm being honest, because I'm a dude. I'm a fanboy at heart. I want to see what they're going to do with this. But I'm with you. In my opinion, yes, he's a quintessential Spider-Man director because I couldn't remember the name of the guy that directed the Tom Holland film. And
Yeah.
you got more of a memory on that than I do, and I don't even remember the guy's name.
Um, who directed Amazing Spider-Man? I believe it was Mark Webb.
Oh my God, I think you're right, but I can't even remember that.
I think it's Mark Webb.
I think you're right.
But there's so many things that I feel like he gets right about Spider-Man. There's so much care that went into this movie. You can make your gripes about Spider-Man 1. You can make your gripes about Spider-Man 3. I feel like this is a perfect Spider-Man movie in a lot of ways. It might not be your preferred take on Spider-Man in the mask, but in terms of just depiction of Peter Parker, I think it's perfect.
Yeah, it was Webb, by the way, and yeah, I just like you said, and who would have thought, Phil, that the Ash Evil Dead guy, the Darkman guy, would have taken that first Spider-Man and the second one and absolutely hit a grand slam. Who would have thought that could have ever even worked, man?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen weirder things. We've seen Mr. Mom become Batman.
Very
We've
true.
seen um, we've seen Heath Ledger become what some people think is the perfect Joker. It's you never know.
Very true. Happy surprise. Sometimes we get much unhappier surprises than happy surprises, but we'll take what we can get as comic book fans. Um, well, we've finally come to the end of this. I don't know. You can make this last word as long as you want it to, as long as you want it to be. Cover all the film here. We know what happens in the third one. We know what's happened with the Garfield versions, and we know what's happened with Tom Holland versions. I'll ask you this as a bonus here. Uh, so, what's your last word on Spider Man 2? And as part of that package question, is this the best Spider Man movie ever made?
I mean, I think it is. I think it's the best Spider-Man movie ever made. I think the only other Spider-Man movie that comes close is Into the Spider-Verse.
Mm,
Um, but for me, Into the Spider-Verse is excellent for reasons that don't have anything to do with this movie. Like if you put my feet to the fire, I'll say that Into the Spider-Verse is a perfect love story to Spider-Man, and not just because of the stuff that we get to learn about Miles and the introduction of Miles, but what Peter Parker means to Miles in that movie. But at the same time, as a fan that grew up on Peter Parker, this is the definitive Spider-Man movie for me. As far as last words, I'm not sure if any other comic book movie means more to me, and that's just personal. Yes, there are other comic book movies that are probably better. You can get into Endgame and Winter Soldier, all these other great movies. You can get into Dark Knight and all these other great experiences. But when I say 2004, we're talking about just started college me, coming out of adolescence, and everything that I learned from Spider-Man comics and what I feel like Stan wanted to do with that character and why that character means so much to so many people all around the world growing up. I feel like this movie gets it right. And like I said, it's just one of those movies where, like I said, I get overjoyed when I watch it because it just meant so much to me at that age, and it just meant so much to me as a Spider-Man fan. And then there's so many emotional moments in it that it's just like, man, it's just, it to me is one, not just one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. It's one of the greatest movies of all time.
I couldn't agree more. We mentioned the Flash TV show earlier. That TV show has always ran with the mantra of three plot points: heart, hero, and spectacle. That's their three. I imagine every time the writers' room is happening, there's a grease board, and those three words are on that grease board. To me, that's the MCU: heart, hero, and spectacle. There's enough heart where it still means something, and you don't forget the dialogue because it's heavy and it often hits you in the feels. There's hero, of course, because there has to be, because it's a superhero flick. And in spectacle, by the CG moments make you, oh my God, did you see that? Before the MCU, in my opinion, there was the Raimi verse. And, I think he did it before the MCU did it. And you could say the X-Men kind of did. Maybe they kind of did. I guess maybe they did. But to me, the guy that encapsulated everything perfectly was Sam Raimi. And I think Spider-Man 2 is a great example of that. I do think it's one of the best films of all time. And I do think it's so hard, Phil, with the MCU now, but it's in my top 5. I'll put it that way. I still
For
love,
sure.
I still love Black Panther. I still love First Avenger. I still love the original Iron Man, but Spider-Man 2 is still, for me, way, way up there. And I'm sure it always will be. One of these days we'll tackle the first one, and that'll be fun too. And that, kids, that true believer, it's good stuff. That is Spider-Man 2. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.